All right, hey everybody, welcome to Keyword Crypto, Michael and JJ. Today we've got Jason Williams. Jason is a professional investor who invests in, well, Jason, why don't you tell us what you do professionally?
Yeah, so I work with Mark Yusko and Anthony Pompliano at Morgan Creek Digital, and we invest in blockchain technologies and infrastructure type businesses in the space, and we buy a lot of Bitcoin.
So, as anybody who follows you over the last month knows, you buy a lot of Bitcoin.
Now that's my personal stuff. I don't publish when our fund buys Bitcoin, but that's just okay. I just do that because I really hate on crypto Twitter. Like, everyone has an opinion, and you never know. You never know like who you're listening to. It could be a very charismatic person, or the person may have great graphics or great memes, but are they really deploying assets and putting their money where their mouth is? So I just started to show a little bit and say, look, if you're gonna follow me or listen to me at all, I'm actually doing something here.
And really fast, is Bitcoin the only crypto asset that you personally go in on? No,
I mine Ethereum and I trade Ethereum. I buy a lot of Bitcoin, and then I own some obscure staking mechanisms like Decred and Tezos, and I own Thorchain or Rune coin. Okay. And I'm interested in the way these particular tokens, you can stake them and earn interest on them. So I've been doing that for a number of years.
Nice. So you sound like you're an actual crypto enthusiast and not like a Bitcoin maximalist or an altcoin maximalist, or it seems like you're just interested in the space.
Yeah, I would tell you that out of the three of us, I probably have the most activity around the periphery, where I wouldn't call Pomp a Bitcoin maximalist, but he certainly thinks the rest of it is kind of exit scammy, where I actually like have different wallets and different tokens and tend to talk to engineers and guys in the space.
Nice.
So originally we wanted to talk to you on this show because we're not investors at all. In fact, we call ourselves artists. We're content creators. We live in the creative world, and we're part of Twitter, and we learn to invest basically for the most part through crypto. However, we invited you on the show before we started having protests in the streets, and before things changed. I mean, and so I think that this is a kind of a great opportunity to talk about what investing is now, and what like what the fuck.
Yeah, I mean, before we talked, or when we first started talking, I think COVID had started, but we didn't, and we kind of started having this global recession. It started to feel like a recession, and then we had this horrible tragedy, this essential murder, and the resulting riots all over the country. So we've been hit with a real like ethical and economic disaster. And how do you navigate that? I guess it'd be fun to explore that with you guys.
And when you pointed out, who are you listening to? Who are you following on Twitter? Are they people that are actually moving money around, or do they just have great memes? The same goes for people who are talking about the cultural situation that we have going on now, and this essentially, culture war. Who are you listening to? I think that's something we can kind of get into too, because along the same lines.
Well, I'll say that if for anyone that follows me, I try to stay pretty level-headed, and to do that, I have to listen to the extremes of thought on both sides. So I never block people for the most part. I'll mute sometimes if someone is just being pedantic and boring, but I like to I like to hear both sides or all three sides of every argument, searching for the truth.
Yeah, and for the listeners, the reason I originally reached out to Jason is because when I found out he worked with Pomp, like Pomp can be overwhelming at times. It can be like a tidal wave of Bitcoin hopium, and I really kind of have a visceral reaction to that where I can't handle it. I need to mute those kind of people. And when I found out that Jason works with Pomp, I was like, what the fuck? These two are like complete polar opposites. Because Jason is one of, and I said this before we started, and I don't mean this to like blow smoke up your ass, but just one of the most reasonable, nice people in crypto Twitter. Like the most like the least reactionary person I've come across in crypto Twitter. And so that's why I was like, you know what? This guy would be a good person to have a chat with, because it seems like he's open to actually people who don't necessarily prescribe to everything that he personally prescribes to. So
if you're listening to us for the first time and you don't know who A. Pompliano is, just Google it or something, because he's probably one of the most vocal people in crypto, and it seems to be, I don't know, let's not go there.
I would say this, between Pomp, myself, and Mark, we resolve internal conflict in a very I would say an intelligent way, in a thoughtful way. Anytime it starts to feel bad, we kind of call a timeout, and that's how we've been able to preserve the integrity of our relationship. And I mean, I've been working with Pomp for over 5 years. He's
out. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's just well, I mean, look, we're kind of ex-athletes, and timeouts are helpful when shit's not going right.
Yeah. It's important.
You know,
so it's kind of silly
to be able to do that, though. That's kind of cool.
Well, in this world, hopefully there are some rules. You know, it always kind of makes it easier to navigate if you understand the game you're playing. So in investing, in life, in relationships, hopefully there are some rules. And a lot of what's going on today is rules-based, and that's what we're having such a problem with. You know, whether it has to do with the rules of war, or the rules of protect and serve, or the rules of being a citizen, there are rules.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of libertarians don't want rules because they feel that people can have these kind of personal rule sets and things work. But that breaks down if you don't have every single person agreeing with that rule set. And what we're seeing right now in communities of color is they're not agreeing with the police's rule sets because they're the ones being killed and oppressed on a daily basis. And so when you have two people and these guys say, just follow the rules, and the other person says, your rules are oppressing us, then those rules, that all falls apart. And it sounds like you and your two partners have rules set up that you all agree to and say, hey, we need a timeout. And even if the other two don't necessarily think they need a timeout, it sounds like they're like, okay, that's the rule. If someone calls timeout, we got to take a timeout. And it seems like it's working for you guys, and that's great.
That's it. And it's kind of like tribal almost. You know, you kind of come to communities and there seems to be a common sense or commonality. The most uncommon thing in the world is common sense, but you tend to gravitate toward the tribe, and the tribe agrees to some kind of rules. And
absolutely, things
have just changed in such a weird way. When you think about what a cop should be, it's like the guy who is trying to resolve conflict and restore order and just be kind of like a referee of the game. But what we've done to police officers is militarize them.
Yeah.
It just makes no sense. If you want to de-escalate a situation, and by the way, we're allowed to organize and we're allowed to protest, but you can't come to a protest with an army, because now you're trying to create a riotous situation. Like, I've never met you guys in person, but if I met you, JJ, and slapped the fuck out of you the first time we met, I doubt Michael would be like, hey, Jason's a great guy. Let's go hang out with him again. It would make no sense. Forever, JJ, you'd be like, that dude is worse than Pomp.
You'd be surprised. I give people a lot of second chances.
Oh, okay, very good.
I think you need to flip that, because if you did that to me, yeah, I would never forgive you. But
right?
JJ is this.
If you're the nicest guy in crypto, I might be the second nicest guy.
Yeah. Okay, but just horrible example, but this is how ridiculous this world has gotten. So we've been forced to shelter in place. We've been forced to wear masks. And then we've been forced out of our jobs, forced out of our careers, forced to lose our futures. And now the police are forcing us to do crazy stuff and continue to, some police officers continue to abuse their position. And it's costing people their lives. So all the rest of it seems not as important as people getting killed.
So I do want to push back really fast on the forcing people out of their jobs and forcing people to stay at home, because this was one of my differing opinions with you on Twitter, is that there was no forcing, there was asking, right? There were a ton of white people with guns standing on the Capitol steps saying, "Open up. We're being oppressed," and the rest of us are looking around like, how are you being oppressed? You're on the steps outside not wearing masks. Like, who's oppressing you right now?
Well,
they're asking you not to do these things, and you can choose not to, but I didn't see too many people getting tickets for mowing their lawn or painting their house or doing these things. They just said, hey, the spread is continuing. We're only making it worse this way. Please stop doing those things. But they can't. I didn't see anybody actually using force to stop them to do that.
There were places where they were giving out tickets. They were forcing people to wear masks.
Well, I was forced to shut down my businesses.
Yeah.
How did they force you? Not like questioning, but just
it's a great question. It's a great question. So on March 18th, as the pandemic rhetoric was escalating, right? And retrospective perspective is the clearest one. We didn't have that. So March 18th, we were concerned that China had given us poor information. We were trying to assess this pandemic and the scope and breadth, the mortality, morbidity associated with it. And as a small business owner of a startup in waste to energy, I have 35 full-time employees. They range from 20 years old to 75 years old. And because of the risks and because of the pressure we had, I had to send the staff home. And then large industries shut down. So the tire manufacturers that feed us the waste shut down and shut off all of our revenue. So my business was forced to shut off because of the resultant closure and shuttering of our economy in the United States. So I was forced to shut down.
Systematically
shut down. The revenue for my business was taken to zero.
Okay, but it wasn't like a cop walked up and knocked on your door and said, "Shut it down now."
Well, we were deemed a non-essential business. We were forced to shut down. If I tried to open up our business or our restaurant, we would essentially have been shut down. The police were asking, please report people who are running their businesses. If you tried to run a gym or a restaurant in North Carolina, you would be arrested or fined, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I would have much rather had. I would have much rather they said, okay, if we catch you doing that, you're not going to have access to the hospital in your community. Like just something simple like that, where it's like, hey, you can make a choice. If you don't think it's dangerous, that's great. But you're not going to have access to the hospital in that situation.
I agree, but they didn't do that, right? We again, when we're looking back with clarity, they didn't do that.
It's easy now.
It's easier now because 100,000 people died in the United States from COVID-19, and that number continues to grow. Last I looked at it, it was 100,000 people. We literally lose 3,000 people a day to car accidents, and I can go on and on with the statistics. And so it was not as severe as we thought, but it was scary and people lost their lives and it's not a good thing. And, but the
pushback on that I would say is car crashes aren't contagious. Like if I don't drive, and I'm sitting in my if I'm sitting at a bar, I can't get killed by a car crash unless the car flies through the restaurant. True. But so that was my only thing, was just like, I have no choice. If you're sick and you choose not to wear a mask, even if I'm wearing a mask, you can still infect me. And that was the danger of, like, now that we're realizing just how it works, I can wear a mask, but it's, have you seen that P graphic? The two like stick figure guys.
Yeah, I love
that's
it.
Amazing. I think that's one of the most educational. Everybody, I'll put a link on it, do it in the show notes, but everybody should see this P graphic because it shows how the virus actually works now. Not that they're understanding it better, where wearing a mask doesn't really help you unless you're sick, and then it's helping you not spread it to other people.
It's so good, and I appreciate your point. Look. Trying to stop a communicable disease is a hard thing. And I agree with you in regards to, whether you take a herd immunity approach or you say shelter in place, wear masks, and try to slow and stop the spread of it like we did. I was one of those people that took it seriously and said, we need to shelter in place and take on the economic effect of that. Yeah. And now 3 months later, it's rough.
I think one of the hardest things, and sorry, JJ, I just keep jumping in.
I just don't want to talk too much about COVID because we got a lot of other things to talk about, and we're about 15 minutes in. But go ahead.
I think one of the hard things is you have a lot of people who say, I don't want to wear a mask because it's weakness, and then the people in the doctors and everybody's like, well, if you're not going to wear a mask, all you're going to do is spread it, and we need to keep the lockdown going even longer. But if everybody wears a mask, we can start to slowly open up and figure out which of the hot spots that mask wearers are still infecting each other and which aren't, and slowly start rebuilding our society, or like reopening our society. But if people say, fuck you, I'm not going to wear a mask, then all of a sudden everything kind of falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in closing, wear a mask, wash your hands, practice social distancing, and consider a vaccine once it comes out. And that's really it.
Nice.
So, well, this is totally related to what we're talking about, but what caught me was when you said there are rules. I mean, with this idea of rules, to me, it's like one of the things that hopefully maybe one day crypto can help contribute to the solution for is this, this thing called rules, the government, this thing that is trying to make things equal for everybody that doesn't seem to be working right now. You mentioned that the three of you have rules where you can take a timeout, but with a large group of people, that's really hard to do. And right now, there's no way that we can take a timeout from things that are happening. There's no way that people can, I mean, how do you take a timeout from cops killing people? How do you take a timeout from, like, do you believe that that's something that can happen on a large scale, or is it something that can only happen in small tribes, like you say?
Well, I think it can happen with proper coaching. And if that coaching is based in love and respect, caring, accepting, valuing, encouraging, if you have a culture that's based in that, you can take a time out. Because if I engage you at all times with human love, human respect, human caring, human acceptance, and human understanding, and we're having a disagreement, I'm not going to kill you.
So people need to be treated like humans in order for that to happen.
If we start there with human life, all life is valuable. If we start there, then I'm not going to kill you, right? And there's the starting point. If I'm arresting you and you're fighting with me, but my life's not in danger, but you are fighting and resisting, and I have 3 of my team with me, I have to realize that this is my job. You may be mentally unstable. Something's not right. You're scared. I'm going to try to de-escalate this, but take control of it. But that control isn't break your neck or choke you to death.
Jeez, yeah. How do we teach people to be reasonable like that?
Well,
it just seems like
it's really, I know, but this is the thing. And I heard Chris Rock do this. This was a great soundbite, and I'm not a comedian, so I apologize in advance.
The Bad Apples one?
The Bad Apples one. Please link that to this recording. I just thought that was so cool, and it really
describe it for me.
Go ahead and say it.
I'm going to try this. So, they're saying, like, look, there are a few jobs in the world that you can't have bad apples. And like cops sometimes get thrown in that, like that cop was just a bad apple. Like the cop who put his knee on that guy's neck and killed him, he was a kind of a bad apple. But you can't really tolerate bad apples with cops. It would be like me as the airline CEO going, you know what? We got a few bad apple pilots that like to crash into mountains. It's just some bad apples. I mean, nobody's flying if you know that I have a few bad apples.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of...
It's a great analogy. I mean...
Yeah, and so...
He knocks it out of the park with that analogy.
Crushed it. So yeah. I really do think... like, when it comes to our army, when it comes to arming someone militarily, when it comes to giving someone the tools of deadly force, those people should be trained the best we possibly can. And like when I watch people in body armor in a line being screamed at, I can only think that their training hasn't equipped them for that situation. Like it just hasn't.
This is something we talk a lot about on this show, the how government actually is supposed to work and how you vote to change things for the better, the way that you want them. And I feel like something has been lost in this country because people in general don't have faith that their vote actually does anything, or that that's not how change happens. And you know, to use that example of, you know, an airline, well, people can vote with their dollars. No one's going to fly on that airline if there are some bad apple pilots. But people have bought into this idea that the police are an institution, and we can't change that. You can't vote for police with no bad apples. It's just going to be there because your vote is insignificant. And I don't know what we can do besides shout from the rooftops to vote and to force your vote to happen and to protest, because protesting is often a more effective vote in some cases.
Well, I'll tell you, society has to be very careful right now, because what's happening is there is an extraordinary social experiment going on. And I saw it happen after 9/11, when the Twin Towers fell in New York. After the war, after all the dust settled, what we got was the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act really allowed the United States to, at any time, categorize anyone or any group as a terrorist organization. And what you can do once you call someone a terrorist organization is you can seize their assets and eliminate their banking functions. So it's a way to eliminate your enemy economically. Think about that. So here we are today, and in most major cities, because of what's happened, there's now there's a curfew. There's a curfew in my city because the last 2 days there's been riots and looting, etc. And track and trace, you've got the police being militarized because they're going to ask for more equipment, and they're going to escalate their power, and you're getting kind of your rights as a citizen taken away, because now you can't protest, because at 8 p.m. you have to get off the streets. And if you're not off the streets, you're going to get tear gassed, arrested, you're going to get rubber bullets, or they're going to use non-lethal weapons against you. Think about what's happening right now. And we've been quarantined, healthy people quarantined for 3 months with 40% unemployment in the country.
And it's not just the protesters. They're attacking journalists who are going out
it's been horrible.
Past curfew.
Horrible. I saw it wasn't a BBC reporter, but it was on BBC, where a journalist lost her eye.
Yeah. Shot her in the eye while she was in a car.
God damn it.
And it's just like,
she has no health insurance.
Yeah, and she's on Twitter being like, "Hey, I can't reply to everybody. Sorry, because it hurts to read. Don't use my circumstances as a way of justifying violence towards other people, please." Still, after being shot in the eye by a fucking terrorist cop, she's telling people she's advocating for nonviolence. Right. And I'm just like,
a bad apple.
Right.
Yeah, that woman is a legend.
Apple. Well, I mean, I guess I guess the protesters have bad apples too.
Agreed. There's no reason that anyone broke into the REI and stole a kayak last night. that just doesn't. I doubt that's the message, right? That's not what we're trying to convey.
Yeah.
So that's a reality right now. You've got people just doing weird stuff because they're angry, and I sympathize with that because they don't have the skills or the training to cope with the realities that they're being put in, right? Joblessness, economic despair.
You have a lot of sympathy there, but this is something that comes up on our show a lot. Like how much sympathy do we afford people because they were brought up in the system, and how much is it somebody's responsibility to become educated themselves because the internet is relatively free?
Yeah. So how about this one? I have tremendous empathy for people, but we have rules. And regardless of your kind of ability to synthesize or appreciate the severity of the rules you're breaking, you're still held to those rules. Yeah. Unfortunately. So my position would be educate people, take them out of economic disparity, provide access to information, decriminalize certain crimes that are overly oppressing people, and they're way overweight in terms of their sentencing. I mean, I would lean into those things. And
whose job is it to educate, though? I mean, that's
parents. Parents at first.
Community.
The parents
teachers.
Need to get educated too in most cases.
Well, but again, I said parents, so their parents and their parents and their parents, right? My parents came.
Change thing.
Yeah, so my parents came from Sicily to make pizza here, and they taught my mom and dad, the best they could, and then here I am, and I'm trying to do the same thing for my kids and anybody who'll listen to me.
See, but that just kind of leads to right-wing people saying, "Well, nanny state, you guys want the state to teach," and it's just like, well, if you don't have parents and you don't have a community, like who's supposed to teach you that?
Well, then mentors and people step up, because I want to stay grounded in reality, and in my reality or my world, if you want something better, you have to seek that better situation, and you can find it through mentorship, through people who you want to be. All you have to do is ask them, like, "Hey, can you help me?" And not just ask for Bitcoin. Really ask, if you get someone's attention, ask them a real question, and maybe they'll give you a real answer. So I don't know that I know that from my life, and if we could spend some time on it, I'm happy to give you kind of my roadmap to success. Starting from literally a single family. My mom raised me, and she worked at you guys don't even know this, but we used to develop film. So she worked at a Polaroid place that you dropped off film.
Nice.
I mean, that's it.
Nice.
So I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth.
Nice. I mean, it sounds like it from your tweets that you didn't. And I think that's one of the things that made me gravitate towards you, is because I don't hear, I think, so you're coming at it from a place of you made it. You're one of you're one of the few people who actually did achieve the American dream, in the sense of you came from nothing and now you have something.
I've been trying to, and I try to resist that guilt that people, look, I can either be who I am and try to do what people did for me, or you could make me feel bad and I can hide.
Yeah. But I think you're also coming at it from a place of, you're not shaming people who haven't made it yet, though. And I think that's the difference between you and other rich people. So a lot of rich people are like, well, you're just not working hard enough. And you're like, motherfucker, I work 60 hours a week. How many hours a week do you work?
No, 100 hours a week.
Yeah. So a lot of these people work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and they're still not able to pay their rent, or they're still not able to feed their kids. It's just it's this idea that somehow if people just worked harder, and I think that's the disconnect. And that's why I like talking to people who actually did come from nothing and have something now is because they understand like it's not that simple. It's not you can't just say work harder, because that shows that you don't understand the reality on the ground.
So true. And Michael, there's these traps that we've been conditioned to step in, and I am just screaming, don't step in these traps. This is how I did it, and I'm looking back, and I was right. I was just lucky. You know, people pointed me in the right direction. I ran in that direction, and it was the right one. Now I'm saying you can do the same thing. And you don't have to have privilege. You don't have to have education. I'm actually, like, I used to be on the board of trustees of 2 colleges and universities. As a major donor, I fired them. When they couldn't answer the question, how much does it cost to get a 4-year degree here? How much does it really cost? And can you actually get a 4-year degree here? The answers were scary. And I said, I can't do I'm out. Like, I'm out. Like, you guys keep your university. Stop asking me for money. There's got to be another way. So, like, in 5 minutes, I feel like I can start the discussion or maybe the change in somebody's thinking to break this terrible industrial age cycle that we've been conditioned to follow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty powerful.
And that's hard, because you just got to keep screaming, and you're going to get a lot of pushback from people, especially for people right next to you in the same financial boat as you, who don't want them to be successful, don't want other people to be successful, because in their mind they're like, well, if they take part of the pie, that's less for me. I can't, like, that's redistribution of wealth. That's a lot of the pushback as artists I feel like I get from a lot of people who are successful. Either they made it or they had it handed to them, through rich parents. That this idea of, like, they purposefully are trying to point people towards the traps. And I think that's what I get so frustrated about.
So true. And by the way, you guys, the things you do with sound, like I checked out your website. It was, like, incredible.
Thanks.
Like, really, the work that you do is, like, it's incredible. Like, it's like sound art.
It is. I'm a sound artist.
It's
thanks for appreciating that.
No, it's wild. I mean, I love music, but that's just so basic compared to what you guys are doing. So the levels of the game are pretty amazing. But
that's all JJ. He's a master.
It's very cool. So, like, would you guys allow me or entertain me to just talk for a few minutes on kind of how to get out of where you are right now, if you want to get out and actually, acquire some assets and not be sucked into this rich get richer and poor go to jail? Because that's really what's going on right now. It's not even the poor get poorer. Like, the poor just get fucking put in jail.
Yeah, absolutely. Do it.
Yeah. So, like, I was absolutely conditioned from when I started paying attention to what adults were saying, that you got to go to college and get, like, a high paying job. And that led me to start to think about wanting to be a doctor. So my whole life, like, when I was 14, I think that's when I absolutely convinced myself, like, I want to be a doctor. When I was 16 and bagging groceries at the Publix, someone asked me, like, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a doctor. The person said, well, what are you going to do to become a doctor? And that was, like, one of the epiphanies that I had. So I, like, went all out, became, like, a hospice volunteer, started, like, making sure that I had all these hours and all this volunteer stuff, and off to college. And I ended up going to PA school, getting my license, getting accepted to Yale to do a surgical residency. And in that moment, while I was there, I got scared to death. I got scared to death by the debt I was accumulating for my master's degree and 2 bachelor's degrees, and all the time I was spending on that education. And I was just locking myself in to a very tight algorithm that was going to say, you're going to become a doctor, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and you can never change professions. You're going to be 26 years old, and that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. It scared the shit out of me. And I ended up dropping out of Yale and starting my own business. And I started to then think about, like, where's the safe spot? Do you have to have the education, or can you find passion, something you're passionate about, and just be the best in the world at that thing and execute on it, and find wealth in the quality of your life, right? The quality of your relationships, the fulfillment that you get out of doing what you have, or the acquisition of material assets, which is how some people, you know, kind of, I call them trophies. They collect trophies, right? 1 car, 9 cars, whatever it is, houses, planes. It's sometimes excessive, but again, I don't judge it. It's just trophies. So from my perspective, there are some decisions you have to make along that road. If you decide to be a highly compensated employee, that's probably like the safest place you could be as long as you have a job. You're going to get benefits. You're going to get taken care of as long as the job exists. It's kind of not a good example right now because lots of jobs went away, right?
Yeah.
If you decide to start your own business and become self-employed, that's pretty dangerous, actually, simply because you eat what you kill. And you guys may experience that right now. I don't know if you work for a firm or this is your own business.
It's my own business.
It's your own business. So if you don't get new gigs, you don't eat.
Oh, yeah. I show up for myself.
Yeah.
You show up for yourself. And by the way, if I shot a cannon off and you couldn't hear, that would suck. Yeah. Right? Or something happened that you lost your ability to practice your art. That would suck.
I don't have any insurance against that. This is it's a total, it's
right.
I'm aiming high. Yeah.
And it's a very dangerous world being self-employed. How you get out of that box is by hiring other people that can do the same thing that you can, tolerating maybe a slight substandard product, but it's good enough, and you can scale that. And once you do that, and you have multiple people doing what you do, and you're no longer doing it, JJ, but you're just managing it, now you're a real business owner.
Well, that's where the business is right now. However, the problem that I have is that I have to sacrifice what I love to do. So it becomes, because I become more of a manager of a business, and I'm not actually doing what I enjoy doing as much. But that's, I think, part of probably becoming more financially successful is letting go of that. Or what I can do is I can find joy in seeing other people get really good at what I used to be good at. Because there's only and I don't mean to talk about my business so much, but that's, I think, something that a lot of artists have to deal with. And if you're not an artist, you might not know what that feels like to have to kind of give up what you love to do in order to grow.
It's so true.
You did it with being a doctor. I mean, it's a really tough decision to already accrue that much debt and decide,
you got it.
I'm going to give up this dream.
Jason, my story is actually it's kind of similar to yours. I think Michael's is too, because we both went to school. I went to Stanford University and originally went for engineering, electrical engineering, and I dropped out of that to study music instead, music and sound. And ever since then, basically I was telling myself, I'm really never going to be hired by a company. I taught for a long time. I still teach because I enjoy teaching, and teaching has become a business of mine too. But it's a lonely road for sure. And scaling the business, that does get hard when you're doing what you love to do. And I also felt like I could do that forever, and realizing that if I really wanted to grow, if I really wanted to have a family and be able to provide for them, I was going to have to grow in a different way.
So true. And that expression through mentorship and teaching is really, I think, a higher expression of your art than even doing it, in my opinion, because it gives you security, but it also allows for permanence of your ideals, which I think is pretty cool. Just to think about, because that's how I resolved the giving up the practice. Like, I can only see 35 patients a day myself, but through the expansion of my business, we were seeing 5,000 patients a day, and I was doing it the way I wanted to do. Right, I was able to force the way I care for people over those 5,000 patient visits a day. And I'm sure you do the same thing.
And I think that's a great thing that I think artists in general have to learn, and I think probably just every human being on the planet needs to learn, is that just because you give up something now doesn't mean you're not going to come back to it later. Mm-hmm. It just means that that's not so. Like I have a master's in acting, and I gave it up for a while, and then now I'm writing, and now I'm kind of acting again. And it's just like, but I went to film, so I started off as an engineer. I got into film school, started to act, then got into writing, then acting again, and now I'm kind of circling back to production and like creating my own projects again. And like everything is circular, and if you just kind of trust what the universe is kind of giving you in the moment, because obviously the universe, and whether it believe in God or the universe or Buddha or whatever, obviously somebody gave you a very clear sign when you were about to go to med school. Mm-hmm. And it was so strong, and you listened to it, and now you're doing kind of what you wanted to do, which seems to be helping people, but now you're doing it at a bigger scale than you would have as a doctor.
It's so true. And it was just a random person at Publix in a parking lot. But, you have to be listening. You can't be so depressed or devastated or economically, unwound that you miss the message, right, Michael?
Yeah.
You have to be listening. So, from my perspective, if you can get there, and I always used this definition of profit to make myself feel better, so that the chasing of profit didn't feel bad in healthcare. And I always said to my teams that profit is a measure of our capabilities. So as healthcare providers in a healthcare business, for us to be wildly profitable allows us to be wildly capable and do the things we want to do. And I challenge you all to think that way as well. As artists, if you're wildly profitable, you then have wild capabilities to do what you want to do. Again, to return to the things you love. You may have to whittle a little bit and mentor a little bit and hold someone's hand a little bit. But at the end, if you're wildly successful, you get to do what you want to do. And that's why I work 100 hours a week. I want to be a billionaire. And that's not because I want billionaire money. I want billionaire capability.
Yeah. And I think that's important to remind people that.
I'm telling you, that's why. And I don't think people say that. I don't know if people authentically say, why are you so greedy? Why do you optimize your life for your own benefit? Why are you doing all this stuff? Why are you pushing so hard? I want to be a billionaire so I can be wildly capable to do the things that I think are good. Hopefully those are good things.
I wonder how natural it is to think that way. I work with a lot of musicians and music producers that the musicians especially that I work with, I can't see them being that ambitious outside of their art and their craft. I can hire musicians to do the work that I used to do, and I can scale and I can grow and I can seek profit, and I can understand that seeking profit is actually a noble thing to do. But for the artists that I work with, it's almost, I don't know if it's that they don't have enough confidence in what they're doing. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's that they just don't love the growth as much. But a lot of them, it's hard for me to imagine them wanting that.
I
can't.
Yeah, let me push back, Jason, in the sense of I think it's amazing that you want to be a billionaire so you can do great things as a billionaire. But what about the people who don't? There's a lot of people out there who don't want to be a ship captain. They just want to be a deckhand and go home and raise their kids and have just a very simple life.
There has to be.
And I think that's the frustrating thing is I consider myself a deckhand sometimes. And if I just had, a small apartment and I had enough money where, if and when I have a family, I can, make sure that they have just the basic necessities in life and we're happy. That to me is like what you said earlier, wealth in relationships, wealth in family, wealth in friendships. To me, that's what's important. And I'm wondering, and I feel like and let me know if you disagree. But like, I feel like our country has been pointed towards become a billionaire, because if you're not a billionaire, you're a failure.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go in a different direction with that, but I'll say this: I don't give a shit what you think about me in the end, because I define myself, and my drive comes mostly from internal mechanisms. I don't derive my motivation from external forces. So again, these are just kind of goofy mantras that I absolutely believe. Like, so that's how I can spit them out like this. I don't write them down. They're part of me. My concern about what you're saying is the game and the rules that you're participating in are set up to rob you of access to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like you can't get there. You can't get there if you sit back and you go, well, I'm not going to hustle, or I'm not going to save, or I'm not going to participate. It's over. Like you're not optimized for the game. Like, we're playing chess. You got to play chess.
Yeah, but my question is chess healthy?
Is chess healthy?
Because you look at our metrics in our country for what defines success, and it's about accumulating as much as you possibly can. And then you go to countries in Europe and in Southeast Asia, where they have a completely different mindset, where it's not about mass consumption and overconsumption and collecting trophies. It's more about it's about wealth in community, wealth in friendship, wealth in family. And they have better metrics than we do when it comes to lifespan, happiness, health, obesity. I mean, metrics across the board. They are better human beings in the sense of just like successful at the physicality part of being a human being. So that's my question: is chess actually healthy for us as Americans? Or are we actually like destroying our lives, making our lives worse by playing a game so competitively that we're losing sight of what actually makes us healthy?
Yeah, look, I love the exploration of these type of concepts, and I would only say to you, yeah, Michael, like if you want those things, if you want a stable apartment, a stable home, a safe environment for your children, the capacity to provide for them in a minimalist way. I don't know what trophies you need, but maybe it's just minimalism. You're going to have to play chess. Like, I really do feel like
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you in that sense.
But it doesn't have to be perverted. Yeah, it doesn't have to be perverted. It doesn't have to go over the top, because that's where America is different. And I would say this: you have the chance to have incredible wealth here in the United States, like unbelievable wealth. Any human being can achieve here. That's not the case in many countries around the world.
Yeah, and I think that's my philosopher question is that a good thing?
That is really up to the individual to decide, because you can opt out. You can opt out of that.
It's a really deep question, and then there's lots of caveats to it too. I mean, in order to play chess, we all have to agree on the rules of chess, or we just have to agree that there are natural rules. But that's probably a big conversation. And one of the things I want to ask you about before we have to go, Jason, is some questions about crypto, actually, if you guys don't mind us talking about crypto before we have to end the show. Good. And that is why Bitcoin and Ethereum and altcoins? Why did you decide to go there, and what do you see the value in the future? Like, does it have to do with anything that we're talking about right now?
It does, in a very deep way. And I'll tell you, I was probably brought to Bitcoin and Ethereum from a purely like engineering and technical monetization and like a monetary solution for my power problem I was dealing with. And I arrived at how amazing Bitcoin in particular was in regards to this transformation, opting out of the traditional banking system how it's failed, how our governments have failed us, and how liberating it could be to take control of this one asset class, because it's actually been built in such a way that it works against this inflationary environment that steals the wealth from the average person. Bitcoin allows you to actually play a different game. And so, for me, it started off very superficial in terms of my approach to it. But
what do you mean by superficial?
Yeah, so I was running a waste to energy plant where I took trash car tires and thermally demanufactured them in a machine that made power. So it took the tire and broke it down into its constituent parts: oil, steel, synthetic gas, and carbon char. And then I had these carbon char, solid fuels, liquid fuels, synthetic gas fuels, and I could combust them into steam and then turn that steam into power. And I was selling the power into the grid as the monetary track in my business plan. But I was introduced to like mining concepts, and the arbitrage between selling power to the grid at 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour versus mining Ethereum in 2015 was exponentially expansive. So Pomp and I built, pretty large Ethereum mine in Franklinton, North Carolina, so large that the FBI showed up at my house.
And we have a friend who says that he measures the value of Bitcoin in terms of power and not US dollars. Like that's his metric. Yeah. And I think that he's full of shit, but I think that you might actually do that.
I would say to you that when people would say Bitcoin's not backed by anything, I would get incensed, because I'd be like, dude, I've spent millions of dollars in graphics cards and ASIC rigs and interconnect and racking and, power generation sources. How can you say Bitcoin's not backed by anything? I've invested tons of money. Just like if we were starting a pizza place, I had to buy, all the things to make pizza. That's that's where the value comes from.
So wait, hold on. So you profit in crypto. Then do you sell your crypto to pay for the business?
No. So the really cool thing about PRTI is they pay me for the tires. So I get paid about 4 cents a pound to take the tires. Great. And then, I probably have a cent in the demanufacturing of them. And then I make commodities. So I make liquid fuels, gaseous fuels, solid fuels, and steel. I sell the steel, sell the oil, turn the synthetic gas and solid fuels into power, and then I mine Bitcoin with that power. So I have total parasitic load, no power cost. So I have zero OpEx cryptocurrency mine. So I don't have to be in Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Iceland, where I'm paying maybe 2 cents for geothermal or hydroelectric power. I have zero power cost and a negative cost of fuels because I'm being paid for them.
Well, my question is, how do you pay your taxes then? Like, where do you get your US dollars from? I mean, that's the business model there.
Well, they pay me for the tires, right? I get paid money as just a non-sexy waste management business on the front.
Right.
And then on the back, it's a very complicated commodities trading business.
Okay.
So I do sell. Go ahead.
So when you say Bitcoin's backed by something, it's not technically backed by anything other than your hard work. And when you say backed by, like, it makes some sense because there are so many people in your situation who wouldn't let it crumble because you've invested so much of your time, energy, and money into it. Yeah. Like, there'd be no reason for you just to walk away.
I mean,
so the chances of it going to zero is very small.
Yeah, think about any business at scale right now to mine Bitcoin and to run a megawatt of power. You'd have to make an investment of millions of dollars to rack and acquire the ASIC rigs. And then you'd have to domicile them in either a purchase power agreement or your own data center. You're not going to give up on that. It's a 4-year life cycle where you pay yourself back your investment, you earn profit, and you reinvest in your future. And if it's run right, it's a highly profitable business. The Bitcoin network's not going anywhere.
Okay, go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
Are you at this point? So there's a great documentary on Netflix a while back about flat earthers, and one of the very last lines, they're interviewing one of the main flat earther guys who travels the world, conferences. He's like the guy you talk to. Everybody loves him in the flat earther community, and he admits at the end, he goes, "I couldn't stop being a flat earther at this point because I'm just so ingrained in the community, even if I changed my mind." But the awareness of him saying that he questions it and knows he can't leave it. Have you kind of painted yourself into a corner with your investments in Bitcoin to have to, and by investments, I mean kind of decking out your entire business model around that? Or could you easily jump to something that was faster or was cheaper to mine or had a higher ROI from mining? Like, are you able to be nimble?
Yeah, so I would say another one of those kind of goofy mantras that I just spit out because they're part of my DNA is I reserve the right to change my mind.
Nice.
So no matter how convicted I seem and how, my heels are dug in on a topic, if you tell me and prove to me something else, I will change my mind and change direction. There's no reason to fly off the end of the earth. It just makes no sense. That makes no sense.
I think that's going to be the title of our show. I reserve the right to change my mind.
That's a good one. Yeah. So just curious. So you said it's a 4-year life cycle with your business. How long did it take to get up and running? I mean, that's a pretty complicated idea. I'm assuming that you had the business idea for selling power to the grid first, and then it took a couple of years. I mean, did you have this business idea or plan or the business itself before crypto was a thing? How old is it?
2015, I built the business. Okay. So that's when I started. And that's when I first arrived at the crypto thesis. We were mining by the beginning of 2016. And we were focused on Ethereum first. So we didn't do ASICs. We built GPU rigs and we're mining Ethereum. And then I was kind of playing the game of what's the best thing to mine with the GPUs, and then selling and buying Bitcoin or custodying and going through the whole, evolution of learning.
So what is your response to the notion that mining crypto is bad for the environment and an inefficient way to create money?
It's just bullshit. It's if you think about what's
I've heard a lot of engineers that are really smart people say that. So I'm just
I mean, think about this. You got a guy sitting here talking to you today that took shitty trash tires that were going to be shredded and buried in the ground, and I'm thermally demanufacturing them at almost zero OPEX, making power, so much power that I can mine Bitcoin with it. So there's a renaissance of renewable energy pursuits because everyone in this industry is trying to drive the power cost to zero. And by the way, I believe eventually we will be so efficient at making power that power will be free. And I'm hopeful of that. Episode. Yeah, I'm hopeful. And you're seeing some of that with oil prices going so low. Like fossil fuels are the dumbest thing to use ever, right? Mm. And eventually no one will use them because we're so efficient at using solar and wind and tidal and geothermal and waste to energy, et cetera. So, that's just
your current business model. Your current business model is eventually going to collapse because we'll come up with better things than tires. But then you can easily adapt it to breaking down of whatever the new thing is.
That's right.
Because we're always going to have some kind of physical object that we need to transform back into its original, carbon-based footprint, and then turn that back into something else. And so it's just an interesting. I was listening to Cedric Dahl interviewed some guy about he goes to the oil, the oil rigs, and he takes the stuff that they're just going to burn off. He takes that and then turns that into fuel for mining Bitcoin. So he's getting it for free, or he's getting it like they're paying him also. So he's getting it for like that's his business model. And so you're the second person in a few weeks who has talked about this business model. And I don't think that a lot of the Bitcoin maximalists actually understand what you're doing, because if they did, they would be shouting this from the rooftops.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
you said
this is actually better for the environment than.
Oh, what you said earlier about circular economy, that is the thesis that drives us. It's like, how do you take the tire, break the tire down, and return the tire back to the manufacturer in some form or fashion so that it's a recovered product that goes from 10% recovered, 20% recovered, 30% recovered. You're reducing the carbon footprint dramatically. And again, you're making free power. Yeah, those guys who are going out to the Permian Basin and locking onto wellhead gas or the flared gases that are a waste stream for the oil producers, they have arrived at the right conclusion. It's just, oil has become so cheap and natural gas isn't profitable to access. So that's where they fall victim. Yeah. It's that fossil fuels are just a dirty business and an inefficient business.
I mean, it just seems like you took their idea and took it to a more environmentally stable idea.
Yeah,
that's more reliable long term.
I would say to you guys that I had the world's first waste to energy cryptocurrency mine in 2015. Like that was the first one that was taking synthetic gas and turning it into cryptocurrency.
Well, it's impressive stuff. And I didn't know any of that before we interviewed you.
No worries.
I wonder why we haven't heard more waste to energy stories in crypto, because I mean,
small guys, this is such a small community. Like nobody is participating. Nobody owns Bitcoin. It's so small.
It seems so, well, even outside of crypto, it just seems so obvious to reuse at this point. Like, isn't that how we've been brought up at this point?
And why are we getting such pushback from conservatives in Congress and all that? Like, this is a perfect example of like, no, we should reuse this stuff and blah, blah, and capture and blah, blah. It's an economic model to make more money. Why are we getting so much pushback from people saying that, like, we shouldn't be doing these things?
I don't want to be like a conspiracy theorist, but you got to go to where the puck is and think about where the money is made. I mean, you've got wars fought over oil. You think they're going to give up that hill?
Yeah, that's
true. Your cars run on gasoline. You think they're going to give up that hill?
And the military-industrial complex that
you think they're going to give? Yeah, you think they're going to give up that hill? I mean, do you think destabilizing the Middle East and Russia right now is something that the United States wants to do? If they said, you know what, as the world's largest oil producer, we're not going to produce oil anymore, nor are we going to buy it.
Yeah.
We're going to phase out of fossil fuels. It would destabilize the world.
Well, man, amazing talk. Thank you so much for joining us. This is really opens my mind a lot. So
more caring, more love, more education, more commitment to humans, loving humans. And a lot of this will be solved because, again, if my mode is slap the fuck out of everyone, then everyone's going to be slapping the fuck out of each other.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way to approach life. So basic.
It's that super cliche thing of treat people how you want to be treated. And I keep tweeting right now, violence begets violence. Like that Jewish quote. And it's just like, because it's true. Like, you can't expect to show up in a violent state of mind, fully decked out in military gear, and expect people not to react accordingly. They're going to defend themselves. So it's like we can't use violence as a way of teaching people that violence is bad.
Amen and amen. I mean, that's right. You know, when you show up to a fight, ready to fight, I mean, it's a fight. A peaceful protest is not a fight.
Yeah.
So it's a sad time, and I'm most concerned that the folks who are fighting for rights right now are actually losing their rights at a faster pace. That's really what's happening in this game.
It's true, because every time there's something gets broken, the police get militarized just a little bit more.
Yeah, and curfews and more track and trace and wear a mask and don't go outside and shut down that business and don't organize for peaceful protests, don't vote. I mean,
that's really hard.
It just keeps going on and on.
It's really hard to put. Yeah, I could not put the blame on people showing up to a protest feeling like they need to fight when cops are killing people. It's just really hard to do. But I hear what you're saying.
So when we had Noah Smith on, we talked about deflationary debt spirals, like that happened in Japan after their recession, and I feel like we're in an emotional death spiral in our country right now, where we keep doing things that make it worse as opposed to doing things that make it better at a mass scale. And it's scary because I feel like we recorded a little bit before we had you on, and like Boston, I hear, is doing some really good de-escalation training in their police force, and they seem to be getting some positive results out of it.
I mean, to make this work, Michael, you're going to have to rebrand police and take away their weapons.
Yeah. That's what I said earlier. I was like,
seriously,
I think we're gonna need to. I said abolish the police and create something new.
A whole new division. There's no more police as you know it. Like, imagine that.
Yeah. Call it the community protection service or something.
There's no more cops on TV chasing people with tasers and armored vehicles. It's over.
We shouldn't be allowed to glorify in my industry, in the film industry. We shouldn't be allowed to glorify cops murdering people for any reason, because I feel like it sends such a bad message on a day-to-day basis into kids' heads, and then they grow up and they think that that's normal, and that's what cops are supposed to be doing, is killing people.
We need superheroes.
It would be great.
I think so. Like, I really do.
Don't you deal with some weird chemical stuff in your business? Can't you just create a superhero?
Yeah. Can't you just become one?
You know, and I hate to even go here with you guys, but, you know, I oftentimes think about, like, robots. Like,
RoboCop?
Well, it's not RoboCop, but it is it's like robots that are they're there to kind of restore order. I just don't see, maybe the same level of conflict shows up when the robots show up.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't know, but maybe it is robots. Or,
I mean, would you really want Siri being the final arbiter for you right now?
Yeah, I don't know.
But guys,
did you say you would like to murder? Did you just say you would like me to murder your children? No, I didn't say that. Yeah. Okay, murdering your children.
Right. Or you're thinking it, and the robot knows. I mean, look, but we're probably going in that direction. So we need to start having these discussions, because I can guarantee you that that's the direction we're going. When you think about the way the military has gone to special forces or elite forces, right? We don't send in the mechanized army on horseback anymore.
Yeah.
We send in drones and EMP bombs and different. It's just a different type of war. That same thing's going to happen to us. It's going to be surveillance, blackouts, cut communication, absolute. There'd be no privacy. I mean, those are the things I think that are really, those are the stakes of the game we're playing right now. And I think robots,
we're doing it to ourselves by clicking the TOS and not even reading it. And we're just like saying, here, know everything about us, track us, do everything. I give you my consent. Like,
yes.
We've taught people to be pretty ignorant. I mean, that's something that you kind of learn just.
I give you Snap. I give you Snap, and I give you like dog ears, and you give me your location.
Yeah. But like, and what do we expect when we allow people to have a profit model based off of taking away people's rights and privacy?
It's exactly right. Like, I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you massive amounts of money to extract people's private information and sell it to me.
Yeah. And the Congress is like, woohoo, more tax dollars for us. Yay.
Robots.
Yeah.
Robots
all right. So that's the answer. Robots. We're going to end it on that. Robots are the answer. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jason. It was really insightful and interesting discussion.
You guys are awesome. No, this is really cool.
All right.
So yeah, we definitely try to come on. We'll try to get you back on and talk more about your philosophy and stuff like that. And
do you want to let our listeners know how they can find you on Twitter or wherever you are?
Yeah, just check me out on Twitter at JWilliamsFSTMED. FSTMED.
We'll have that in the show notes too.
I appreciate it. And if you could share that Chris Rock thing and the pee pants.
Absolutely.
I love that.
They're on the list.
All right, cool. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. We're going to end it.